is back in open session. The next item on the agenda is public comment. We have a sheet here with 2 people who have signed up. We have folks wishing to make public comment at this time.
Go ahead and call their name, I think.
Call the name? Okay. So we have, well, actually, before I do that, could I mention that we'd appreciate it if you could attempt to limit public comment to 3 minutes per. And if there are a group of individuals who are planning to make similar statements, if they can appoint a spokesperson. All right. That said, the first person on the list is Michael Casey.
It's Case.
Case, I'm sorry.
My understanding is I will have another option to speak later on in the meeting. I wish to wait until that other option is available.
Okay. Yes, there is a second public comment at the end.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is, let's see, is this Glenn? I apologize. Klecka, my apologies.
I'm a graduate of Hollywood School, Hauser Junior High School, and RV High School. So I know the area quite well, and I would like to talk about
If you can walk up to the microphone. It's just for the TV. For the audio, for the...
If there's an option, I came to find out what your situation is, and I'll hold my options later.
Okay. All right. All right. Do we have any additional public comment? All right. So if not, does any board member have any proposed changes to the agenda? All right. If not, the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
So the first 2 items I wanted to share, and then I'm actually going to suggest that the other items go to the end of the meeting agenda. The first one is just a letter and an update from our chief of police in regard to the crossing at First Avenue. Wanted to share that with the board and with the community. So some safety improvements, including thermoplastic markings for roadways so that crosswalks are enhanced, reflective, and better noticed by traffic. Will be increased for heavy-duty crosswalks with the piano-type bars on the outside and at all 4 intersections. There's also an agreement to put school zone or slow school zone ahead roadway markings at the 4 intersections in that area. And additionally, they stated that the village can submit a permit to have the yellow flashing lights on current street signs approximately 300 feet north of the intersection there over by Riverside Brookfield High School, and the intersection that our Hollywood students use coming over to Hauser. So there's a requirement those need to be 300 feet away from signaled intersections. It would be at the village's expense, but they are going to go ahead and make the application process. So that was from our police chief, Tom Weitzel, to the superintendent over at RB High School and myself, and wanted to share that as the board had been very supportive and had sent a letter in support of improvements at that crosswalk. The other item is our student enrollment report, which I shared with you in June, and there are some updates since that time. And you'll see the board has a report here where items are reflected in yellow where we expect to exceed our class size policy of 20 students in our K through 3 and 23 students in our grades 4-5. So again, the board won't be acting on those requested waivers until the August meeting, as is typically how we've been doing it, but I think it's always helpful to see kind of where our enrollment is trending and how we're addressing that. So student assignments were made per our policy and our agreement as of June 30th, and those were sent to all of our families that had been registered and enrolled at that time. They were given a determination of which elementary school they'd be attending for kindergarten or for first grade, or and other new students as well. Fewer students obviously in the additional grades, but K and 1 are where we have a good number of new students every year. So we have, since that time, obviously students continue to enroll. So we have a few other students that will be making those placement recommendations. And I've also been asked to consider a number of student transfer requests, which we'll be considering by the end of July. So I'll continue to keep you updated, but I do anticipate that we'll be having really at all of our schools some requests for extension of our class size agreements. And then the other items, it's really items number 3 and number 4 about our board vision goals and having some opportunity for vision goal setting discussion, which includes a review of our board agreements and board superintendent agreements, as well as an annual review of our intergovernmental agreements. I would suggest that we take that to the end of the meeting, just given the structure and the setup for tonight's meeting.
Can I ask a question going back to
Sure.
When you talk about the transfer request, is that kind of responsible for some of these large numbers, whether they be minus or plus additions to these schools?
No, those minus and plus numbers are in
'Cause they
comparison
seem
to
more
last year at this
significant.
time.
Okay, yeah, they
Yeah.
seem, some of them seem much more significant, either a deficit or
Right,
an
no, I haven't
addition.
acted any of those, so none of those numbers are represented.
Thank
What
you.
we did create is a column here at the bottom left. It's a yet to be placed. So we have, since this report was done on July 11th, actually 5 new kindergartners yet to be placed, brand new, who've registered and enrolled since the last report,
Okay.
and then 3 new first graders, and then a few others in the grades beyond that.
Okay, thank you, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a question along those lines. You have the enrollment summary for June, and then you have like sort of the projected enrollment data for June. I noticed the class sizes not necessarily don't align. Is that just because we had, and I know the dates aren't the same on them either. Does that mean we got that many more students within that short period of time?
I'm not sure I understand your question, David.
So the third bullet, the projected enrollment, I'm just looking at Hollywood, for example. It shows 26 for the first grade. But when I look at the June enrollment summary, it shows, all the schools, it has Hollywood's first grade at 22.
There were some errors on the June enrollment summary. I'm not sure if
I think you were actually looking at the last, so the June enrollment summary, are you looking at the one that was informational item on the board report that would have been the end of year of the 2018-19 school year, not the
I see,
projected new
okay.
enrollment?
My mistake, thank you.
Okay, with all due respect, it's very difficult to hear what we're talking about. Is there any way we could speak louder? Thank you.
My one question on the enrollment report, am I loud enough? I mean, I can get loud. No, I'm kidding. When it's talking about the change, are we talking about the change from last year's second grade to this year's second grade, or last year's
Yes.
first grade going into second
No,
grade?
last year's, like, the exact same grade level, it's just a comparison number from
Right,
August of
so
2018.
if you
yeah.
look at the Hauser 8th grade, it says drop 26 kids. That means because the last year's 8th grade was that much larger than this year's.
Right.
It's
Right.
not
Okay.
a cohort that we're following.
Right.
It's just the grade
The
level.
grade level.
Right.
That 8th grade
Yeah.
was very large.
Yeah.
So that might explain
And that's
also
the deficit
what David's
explanation,
looking at.
because that last year was extremely large. So if they're
I think the 22 in the Hollywood was the end of this school year's number.
It might be helpful to see the cohort changes though, in August. That would be interesting, just for information from last year to this year. You can
We'll see. I know I'm taxing our system, but absolutely, if that's
Well,
something
do
that
we
the
have it
whole
in
board
a
would be interested in.
Do we have it in a document from last year? We could just pull.
I think some of the graphs that Jeff has done will reflect that.
You can also just read it off
Yeah,
just by
you
looking
can- you can
diagonally.
read diagonally.
You can just diagonally
I know, but
look,
it's
yeah.
nice to see it all in one place. I'm saying for.
I guess in our agreement of, again, it would be an extra data report that I'd be asking our data team to pull together, but if that's something that the full board was interested in seeing it, again, yes, you
I
can
think
make,
the reason
yeah.
I'm asking is because I'm interested in those trends since we've had the longitudinal study for enrollment. I'd be curious to see how the trends are going.
Is it something that
If it's
everyone's
just me,
interested
I can manage, but if anyone else is interested.
Would you like to see an additional report on that?
What does everyone think? Would we like that?
For my personal opinion, at this time, no, maybe.
No, not now, but maybe August or September.
Well, yeah, well, I guess.
If it's too much in August for the staff.
Yeah, I'm not.
Whenever you can get.
I don't need to set it at this time.
Don, that's something we can talk about then? So, all right, thank you.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of consent agenda. Board Secretary, can you read the items on the consent agenda?
So the consent agenda for this meeting includes the minutes of the previous meeting from June 26, 2019, the personnel report as presented, including the dismissal of support staff employee Linda Watson, payables pre-list as of June 28, 2019, payables pre-list as of July 3rd, 2019, payables pre-list as of July 17th, 2019, review of closed session minutes of the previous 6 months, and leadership supplemental salary.
Okay. Any board member require removing an item from the consent agenda? All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Margie, can you call the roll?
Mr. Marhol?
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Miss Murphy?
Aye.
Miss Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right. Next up, we have the Riverside Education Council. Nothing? Okay. Next up, we have board member comments. First is the Education Committee.
We also, as usual, welcome Ms. Angela Dolzel to our team. She's been meeting everyone and, getting to know our district and doing her own dissertation, so it's a busy time for her. We appreciate all the extra time getting to know us. So I'm not going to make her present yet until she gets to know us, until we have some school business going on. So please continue with your search for getting to know everybody when they come in. Thanks.
Welcome, Angela. Next up, we have the Facilities Committee.
Yes, the Facilities Committee has met, once
It's an advisory committee.
since the last board meeting. That was June 27th. We had Ramesh on the phone and Steve Wright from DLA present, and a substantial amount of discussion was had about the central front office and trying to determine the best location for that office. Ultimately, for a number of reasons, we've come to the conclusion that a first floor location, i.e. not the garden level, is best for Central School. That includes some outside commentary, those outsiders being the chief of police, some community feedback and some teacher feedback. As you know, I originally started off very much in favor of the basement level office. Ultimately, what it does come down to, sorry, I wasn't talking loud enough, is from an operational standpoint of Central School, the first floor office is better located for control of and monitoring visitors from both coming in the front door, visitors leaving, which is a significant comment in the security literature, is you don't only need to know who's in the building, but you also need to know that they've left. There are some benefits from being on an upper floor that don't involve technology. This location also does require, however, a ramp to the basement, the garden level, to maintain ADA compliance and access. I could probably go on, but I shouldn't. Are there any questions? Or Linda always has something that I forgot. She's good at that. You're good at that, excuse me.
Right, so just to make this clear, this is just a recommendation coming out of the Facility Advisory Committee. Nothing has been, decided. So I guess we'd like to take this opportunity to talk about it a little bit. I think Joel summarized it for those reasons. I mean, there'd have to be, you had mentioned the ramp, there would have to be a ramp either way. So that's not like a decision, that wasn't one of the leading decision. I would just like to take the opportunity to say that the committee work we did, I was really grateful that we were tested to be able to dive into this more, to look at it. I thought the work was really, really deliberate and really thoughtful by all the administrators in the room and the board members and our consultants. I thought it was a really thoughtful process that came down to operational and also cost. There's not a huge cost differential between the two. If there were, I don't know if we would come with the same decision. But at this point, I would just really like to hear, feedback from the board. If that's what.
Yeah, so it's
the
not,
plan
it's
is.
not really a voting item, but certainly
No.
the consensus the board was different.
Comment yet until we see more detail about the ramp and thing. I need more details.
But I guess my point is, I know you guys have been doing a lot of work on this. You don't go into this haphazardly, so I'm sure that there's been enough thought, and I appreciate your time in doing this, and I'm sure it's going to be a really great outcome in the end for safety and aesthetics as well.
I had a question here. No, I think I heard Linda mention that cost is not part of this consideration at this point, so there's not really any
The
idea
cost
of-
differential is not large.
It's not a big percentage difference.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
very
To
comparable.
go up or down, there's probably a slight cost, or it's slightly more complicated to go downstairs because of moving some of the electronic equipment, the fire alarms, the PA system.
I mean, this is also an opportunity if we wanted to ask any questions of Stephen or Mesh, I would assume, too. Not just.
I'd rather do that when we have drawings in front of us, if that's okay.
So I just want to be clear that the reason the committee was really charged with the recommendation, bringing the recommendation forward to the board to sort of get an assurance of consensus, not a vote, is that the drawings are proceeding with the recommended plan unless there's a strong sort of impetus from the board to not move forward. Am I correct, Steve, in explaining it that way? Okay. So it's not just sort of, we're not going to now move forward with schematic design doing both. We would really move forward with the recommended option.
Right, it's because we're in a board member comment section. I'm just wondering, what are you asking from us? What do you want?
We're really just asking if there, because this is something that's been talked about before, if there would be strong disagreement in a way that we would tell our architect to, move differently. So it's really, again, a sharing recommendation to the committee. And if there's not strong disagreement, then you would continue on as is planned from the feedback from the committee.
Just make a few comments. First of all, I want to thank Joel and Linda for summarizing so well the considerations that you went through on this. And obviously, the committee's done a lot of work, and it's a complicated question. And I think there are sort of many aspects that you have to think about. Not just security. Obviously, security is paramount. But if you can make the room secure with different entrances, then of course that's something to think about. There's the quality of the room for the students. There's a number of considerations. I really appreciate you guys delved into this and thought about it, and came back to your recommendations. I guess looking at your analysis and the reasons that you arrived at the conclusion that you did, I guess there's a sort of fair amount of subjectivity in how you weight the various reasons, and I think I would have weighted things differently. I'm not completely persuaded that this is the right call, but I do realize there is an element of subjectivity in how you weight different things does affect the outcome, and so I guess at a personal level, I would not have made this call, I think, but I do respect that you have done a thorough job, and that my views are probably not going to prevail in this matter. So,
Well, what is it, I guess, in particular that you feel is underweighted, or what's
well, I think that some of the primary considerations that I think are one is that if you put it in the basement, then you get the ADA compliance automatically. Because as Linda said, you got to put that ramp in no matter what. So you get that automatically. Whereas with the first floor, you'd have to have people with disabilities coming in the basement, which already creates two entrances as opposed to one. So there's already a security concern. If you're concerned about security, you got one secure entrance on the first floor. You don't have one on the ground floor, and how are you going to get someone's going to walk down there manually and let them in? And to me, that raises some security questions right there. The second reason is I think that classroom on the first floor is both my kids were in that classroom, and I think that's a beautiful classroom. Losing that for the classroom that is currently the principal's office, I think, is a loss, and I don't see. I get some of the gains, and then the third reason is that there's a lot of talk in the analysis about line of sight. That you can from the first floor, you can see the street, you can see what's happening, and so forth. As we've discussed in the past, I don't think that's true because the street is so much lower than the first floor. if you're sitting in a chair in the entranceway welcoming visitors, which I think is probably the case, you cannot see the street. You have to stand up and look just because of the angle. So I find that reason to be also, I just am not persuaded that that's correct. I don't think that the secretary is going to stand up and look every time someone buzzes. So I guess what I would say is that I weight things somewhat differently, but again, I do respect that people can have different opinions and weight things differently here. So.
What do you mean the secretary is going to look every time something buzzes?
Well, so there's one of the things that's repeated in the document is that line of sight,
Yeah.
and it seems fairly clear to me that you do not have a line of sight when you're sitting to the street.
But they're not buzzing in from the street.
No, they'll buzz from the door. But what is the purpose of the line of sight if you don't have the line of sight unless you stand up and look? That's my question. You don't get that automatically unless you actually stand up. And my claim is, people are not going to be standing up every time someone buzzes in to see what else is happening outside. That's what I understand that line of sight argument, I guess.
I think Jeff, you're correct in saying, and I've walked through both rooms with Mr. Gatz, and I've sat about where we think a receptionist would be in either spot. The line of sight is not, it's an element, but honestly, as I said before, I was initially opposed to putting that office up on that first floor. But from an operational sense of how the building operates and where that the office wants to be the nerve center, if you will, of people coming and going, that is a better spot for it. Technology can make either location viable in terms of watching visitors or not watching them. There will have to be a procedure for if someone needs to use the ADA ramp to the lower level, that they're going to have to go down to that spot, buzz in, and a staff person is going to have to go downstairs and meet them before they are actually allowed into the building. So that is a hindrance. But ultimately it came down to that first, in my mind, and as kind of the central location from which things happen, that first floor location is better. It's not a slam dunk, but I think it's better. And a classroom will be moved to a slightly darker spot. That's not great, but I'm not,
There are still windows in there.
there are,
Yeah, but it
and
faces
when I
the-
say slightly
or it
darker,
faces
it's
the air
slightly
conditioner.
darker. We're not saying that we're
Which is not great.
suddenly in a cave.
You mentioned you walked with Mr. Gatz. Was Mr. Gatz on the committee? Did he have an opinion or express an opinion on that?
He expressed how his office operates right now. He explained that was more of it. He did not sway the committee either way. I certainly didn't come in with a preconceived notion of where this office should be.
I think he had an opinion.
He did.
I definitely think he, from the operational sense, he definitely had an opinion that he, as did other administrators in the room. But, I mean, we looked at all sides of it as well. So, yeah, I mean,
I guess maybe is it more fair to ask, was there a consensus among the central admins?
because
yes.
we didn't
Well,
bring anything to recommendation that we
With
weren't all
Mr.
in agreement
Gatz.
with. Yeah. That's why I think this one took a lot longer, because I don't think everybody was gonna, we had to do more research and more, is there anything else that we can?
Steve or Ramesh, anything that you would want to add?
Well, can I just say something?
Yeah.
I'm also not entirely persuaded. I'm also, the document that was provided kept mentioning a line of sight, but I don't think that's accurate, as Mr. Miller has talked about, and I was disappointed also at the weighting of the document and the neutrality in a sense of the two locations, and so I'm not totally in favor of the projected course. I might be a minority, but
I believe in the discussion that we had a couple of weeks ago, I mean, the way we approached it was to try and prioritize what is important for this exercise. The exercise was, from a secure entrance standpoint, getting an ADA ramp, I mean, going down the list of requirements. If you made security your prime requirement, we felt that this was a better option. I think, Jeff, your point was definitely taken into account. You know, you mentioned that when you stand up, you have to stand up to see the line of sight, yes. But being the basement, it wouldn't have been any better. You end up with the same problem too. So if you waive the consequences of coming up to a level 1 entrance, we felt that this was a better option. That's why we made that recommendation.
I guess I just prefer having an accessible entrance that's ADA accessible at the same time. I think it's just kind of an easy thing to do and natural, but I'm a minority probably. But.
So just to be clear though, I fully understand.
You know, it would be much easier to have it accessible and have everyone come in the same place.
Right, but there still will be an accessible entrance, so.
I know this, but
Okay, I
it
just
would
wanted
be
to make
different
sure.
than the regular entrance, so it'd be, that those people wouldn't feel like they're going into the main entrance because they wouldn't be. They'd be in a different place, so.
And that was thoroughly analyzed. There's a lot of historic preservation conversation about that as well. I don't know, Steve, if that's something you want to reiterate some of that.
The discussion that the Historic Preservation Commission gave us was whatever ramp we put in, if we make it, we can make it handicap accessible, where they wanted to make it a minimal slope. Because if you make it too steep, you have to put
Right.
handrails up.
Right.
They did not want to see handrails.
Of course, yeah, right,
So
right.
going from the front sidewalk in toward the building at a less enough slope, that we don't have to do handrails, we can accommodate that with
Right.
the design that we have.
And is that in between the trees and the bushes so that you wouldn't be taking out the tree?
We
It
have to take
can
out
be.
the bushes. This would be just to the north side of the existing stair.
Okay,
But the tree remains, we have to go between a tree and there's a fire hydrant.
okay,
We have to go between those.
okay.
Is there any further discussion? All right. Thank you, Joel and Linda.
And I just want to point out too, please, as we go through this process, like I always say, please reach out to me. If there's any questions or concerns, I want to hear everything from everybody.
I've spoken with Joel because he was on the committee too. I apologize for not calling you also, but I spoke with Joel.
I didn't even know you spoke to Joel.
Yeah, I
But
did.
I'm just saying, I just want people to know that, like, please reach out because all the feedback and all the input is 100% appreciated and necessary to get this completed in the best way. So please, my phone is open. Like,
But this does mean then that Steve would move forward and address the next phase of the drawings with the main level, upper level security entrance.
as long as,
That was my understanding,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Are we
I'm not entirely in favor of it, but I'm a minority, so if you have the majority, you can go ahead.
I think you have a majority, so I think
Do-
that's
I was
a
gonna say, do
majority
we?
rule.
I
Yeah,
don't
would
know,
say
you'd
yes.
have
that's why I haven't heard from a few, so I want to make sure. I don't want to just assume anything, so.
I do too, because it's a significant phase in our
Yes, yes.
process here to move
Yeah,
forward.
Well,
so
I support it,
Okay.
so.
I'll probably go with the recommendation. I don't have to go argue too strongly against it, so you guys have done a tremendous amount of work on it. If that's your recommendation, I'll support it.
My daughter was in that classroom as well, and I definitely do appreciate the loss of that space. And I also take Jeff's note on the line of sight into account. However, I don't have enough. Nothing else would persuade me to overturn that recommendation.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I certainly don't want to move forward if we're just assuming something, so.
Okay. Next is the Finance Committee.
So I met with Mr. Fitton last Tuesday, and we talked about the budget. He's making a lot of progress on the budget, and I think we might hear about some of that tonight. He's also made some, updated his long-range forecast of the district finances over the next 10 years, so we'll see that as well, I think, at some point. And he's also implementing the new software, which is, I think, the once in a two-generation process, and he thinks that's going to streamline things a great deal, so I'm sure he'll talk about that as well. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, do we have anything from the Personnel Committee?
Not at this time.
All right. Do we have anything from the Policy Committee?
Not now, but wait till next month.
I got that email.
Yeah. I did
Is it a lot? Is it a lot?
And then they said, wait till November, too.
Just before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
There are little things to think about.
All right, next up is old business. And that's the MOU for Design and Development and Construction. Is there a motion to approve the MOU for Design, Development, and Construction as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Jeff and I met earlier today with Ramesh and discussed the process of arriving at the MOU numbers, i.e. the design fees by DLA. And Ramesh has taken a very thorough look at scope of the project, as well as encouraging, if that's the right word, the best efficiencies by DLA and DLA's subconsultants, the subconsultants being the civil engineer who does the outside work, and the mechanical and the structural and a few other people. The fees represent a good, best effort to balance cost as well as quality of work. They're fair, and Ramesh did an excellent job of, I think, trying to defend and promote the district's interest in this fee negotiation. Jeff, did you have any other?
Yeah, no, I just would, I agree with what Joel said. I would add to that, and I appreciate Ramesh negotiating on behalf of the district. I think, as Joel mentioned, you did a very thorough job of looking at the different jobs, the different specifics of each of the 4 schools, and looking carefully at that. In comparison with our last contract with Legat, I find the fees that we have negotiated in this MOU to be higher than I would have liked to have seen. I would have liked to have seen a number that was considerably closer to the Legat fees, and I think the Concept 3 was the firm before that, so I am I am appreciative of the job that Ramesh did. I know it's not an easy to negotiate these things, but I guess I would have been happier to see something closer to the old numbers, because I think these numbers are a bit higher than I would have expected. But I do appreciate that he did a thorough job analyzing it. So I guess I'm a bit conflicted on the whole thing.
Ramesh, is there anything you can discuss on that? Actually, could you get to the microphone? Thanks. Appreciate it.
So we did take a look at DLA's proposal that came in initially 2 weeks ago. It was a very detailed proposal with breakouts for each of the design phases and the overall cost of the project. And recalling that we have had previous memorandums that have approved concepts and investigative studies, we needed to take a look at the overall dollar values that we're looking to approve. There was no fixed percentage that I had in mind that I was trying to work towards. I was trying to work towards a fair and reasonable design fee that would be the architects happy and the school district is happy. Those are the 2 important components. And the end result would be compared with the historical ranges of numbers. So there was a process to this whole event. I discussed this with Steve multiple times. We went back and forth. We discussed each of the service phases that are there, and we indicated as the number of people who are going to be working on the job, and the fact that during construction administration, my firm's going to be represented on the site. we're going to have a construction manager. We reduced their services. We felt that we need multiple tiers in there. And that's how we brought the cost down. And we also have put them under fixed fee. As compared to being on a percentage of a construction dollar, you would have known what their fee is only when the bids came in. In this way, we know what their fee is today for this project. So yes, if it bids a little bit higher, they're not getting additional dollars for it because this is the fee that we've agreed to for these services. So there was a value to negotiating the fee at this stage as compared to waiting on a fixed percentage at a later time. Overall, the projects are difficult. There's a historical component, there's additions, there's civil components to it. If you look at the whole process, yes, it's a little bit higher than what we could have expected, on what we have seen on other contracts. But every contract has to be looked at as its own merit. You can't just say that I've worked on a 5% fee elsewhere, so therefore this should be also 5%. There's a complication to this one. I mean, Central's, the elevator is not a typical elevator. It's a difficult project. Each level has got a different height. It's a custom project. So when you look at all those aspects of it, DLA's team's a very strong team. We discussed this with their consultants. We went back and forth and we said, we want the best level and best effort. On the other hand, we don't want them to be in a situation where they felt that we had shorted them and they do a lousy service. We didn't want to get to that stage. So we had this discussion back and forth where they got to a comfortable stage, we got to a comfortable stage, and then we analyzed the historical costs, and I believe it's a very reasonable number that we've arrived at. We're paying a little bit more on some, but we're also paying significantly less on others. Overall, it falls within the threshold of an acceptable range, and I think that's what really we want out here.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I just had a comment. I would have liked to have seen no additions to this old business item after we've already discussed it. I think it was really difficult. I prefer to keep everything public so I'm not scrambling and the rest of us aren't scrambling in the last minute with regards to the Blythe Park addition to the MOU. And so I won't be voting in favor of this because I don't want to continue with changing old business items after we've already discussed. So.
And I know that's our agreement. Obviously, it's been a
That
very
is our
dynamic,
agreement.
very dynamic process.
It's important
Yeah.
that we keep everything public, so.
It's public, yeah.
I know this,
realize
but
it's
it also
yeah.
puts the board in an awkward position to add last minute changes that we've already discussed, so.
I think you're referring to the Blythe Park edition?
Mm-hmm.
And the numbers have changed too.
Yeah.
Anything further to say, to shed light on that, or?
So the Blythe Park number, the Blythe Park possible classroom, so if you recall, there was a original, at one point in our design phase, a classroom addition to be added onto the back of Blythe Park, or I should say an additional classroom because the where exactly it would be located is unclear. Really, this has come about through our very real-time enrollment issues right now. We know that we look like a 9-section school district per grade level, and in order to do that and to manage the crowding at Central and the crowding at Ames, we really feel that the Blythe 2-section option is something that we've been working toward, and it really became a pretty significant kind of aha moment in our conversations and looking at the draft schematics with our architect and with our principals and with our administrative team. So certainly apologize for that change in our typical process, but sometimes there are, again, this facilities process has been very dynamic, very evolving, and rapidly changing. So I continue to communicate with all of you as best I can. This is an idea that certainly, I know, Sherry, you said you're going to vote against it. That's fine. We've actually named it really as a separate item in the MOU. So I think that's an opportunity for the board to say we'd like to approve the MOU without the Blythe classroom design idea, or we could approve the MOU with the Blythe classroom design idea, or not approve the MOU. I mean, that is really the question before the board right now. So.
In the MOU, it doesn't say that we are absolutely doing that. It said should.
It would be to add it in as a design phase element right now, and there is certainly a cost efficiency, and Ramesh and Steve can probably both comment on that, to adding it to the MOU right now. It's not to say we build it, and it would also be bid out as an alternate even if we did move forward, but it is to add it into the design work right now.
So As soon as this was brought to our attention, we called up DLA and we asked them, like, how much will it cost? So the thought process really is that we add the design on, we bid it as an alternate, so we need to keep moving forward. If it doesn't meet the budget limitations that we have, or the board, while doing the discussion, decides not to do it, it can be just struck out. But the cost of designing at this stage was a smaller number as compared to making this an independent project. If this were an independent project, it would cost 5 figures. But as an add-on right now, since they already have that team, they're rolling through it, it was a much smaller number. We felt that's why we made the recommendation, and it can be taken out at any time.
I totally understand that. I think the administration should have anticipated that we would have larger numbers at Blythe, considering we couldn't move people until 2020. And I think you should have known that earlier. That's why I'm disappointed about the last minute changes. So I think we deserve time to study and to talk about it more instead of the same night. So.
I can understand sort of the last minute.
It's just I don't want to continue with that kind of procedure. That's all. Okay.
Well, but the thing is, it's not. This is the first time this has happened, and so
right, which is why I'm saying I don't want it to happen again.
and I guess, but the thing is, though, this is a construction project. This is a large construction project for the entire district. This is not. I mean, I do anticipate, as much as I don't want to see this again, I do anticipate stuff coming up at the last minute. I've gone through construction stuff like this before.
I know. We have also gone through construction projects the last 4 years. We always had notice. And I would just appreciate that in the future, that we go through it proper.
Right.
procedure.
And I guess what I'm saying is that I know this is an exception. I'm fine with this. I like the fact that it's a fixed fee. The prices are a little bit higher, but at least we know what we're locked into. And so there's no surprises when bids start coming back. So
Yeah, I agree with that point about the fixed fee. That is actually
Yes,
highly desirable.
I'm fine with
Appreciate that you did that. I take Sherry's point about the adding things to the last minute. That said, I think making Blythe a 2-section school is absolutely crucial for our district. With the enrollment that we've seen in the last 15 years, that will be, I think, the key, along with Ames, to basically stabilizing things in terms of a 9-section school, rather than constantly having flux between the schools. Some schools overcrowded, some schools half empty. I think really making Blythe a 2-section school is absolutely key. So I'm strongly in favor of adding this design element at this time.
We're all like, I'm in favor of it as well.
Yeah, I am in favor of obviously fixed fees. I just would appreciate the administration having the foresight I think they should have known about Blythe Park. That's all.
I think, and I understand where you're coming from, Sherry, because I equally don't like, I have a hard time with last minute items, but I can't say that I'm entirely as positive towards the second section of Blythe as Jeff is, but this is a good time to, as Ramesh said, this is the most efficient time to do it from a design
I totally get that.
perspective.
Yes, I'm not wanting to spend a lot of money either. I realize I'm a minority, but I would like to talk to the administration and just realize I don't want any more old Mrs. changes after the fact. So.
Leslie, do you have a thought?
Nothing new that hasn't already been said. So I will not belabor the point.
In the context of Blythe, I would also say that I think we're going to be essentially, if we continue on the path we're on of adding a section every year until it's a full 2-section school, the enrollment at Blythe is going to grow significantly, and we're not adding any space there under the current sort of plans. In contrast, in Hollywood, we are picking up essentially 2 full rooms even before we add anything relative to when the preschool was there a couple of years ago. We picked up 2 rooms when we moved the preschool to Blythe, and then we lost 1 with Ladsey, so that's a gain of 1. When Ladsey moves to Central,
Is that a
That's,
sure thing, though? That lets
Well, if we move the Ladzy to Central, which
Okay.
makes total sense to
Right.
do,
That's in our plans. That's the anticipated.
then
plan,
we'll
yeah.
pick up 2 rooms. So that means that of the 7 rooms that the K through 5 kids, that regular K through 5 kids that Hollywood had, they're going to go from 7 to 9. And that's before we add anything, a multi-purpose room. So I think we looking at the flow of students rather than just the construction, I think it's really important to do that. I mean, think about Central. Central had, at its peak, 3 sections of 4.
Yeah.
As we make Blythe, if Blythe picks up more sections, that number is going to shrink. But in the plans they have for Central, we lose 1 classroom because of the multi-purpose room. So we've gone down from, and Central was maxed out. It was maxed out at the 3-4 sections. So we've gone from possibly having 3 4 sections down to 2. Just because we lose a classroom. And then if we move Ladzy, we lose another classroom. So we're down to 1 extra classroom at Central, 1 out of our biggest school, basically. And I think we'll have basically no capacity at Ames either. So basically, we have to be very careful about how we're allocating construction budgets to make sure they align with where the students are going to be.
But let's also keep in mind too, Hollywood, I mean, I understand your point, Jeff, but Hollywood has some pretty small sizes. I mean, we have a 1st grade class next year at 26.
Physical size.
Do you mean enrollment or
No, the physical footprint.
Square foot.
the footprint?
with the largest class sizes.
Yeah, they have a physical footprint of some small class sizes. I mean, from small classes.
So the classroom itself, you're saying?
The classroom itself.
But aren't they about the same size as Central and Ames on average? Slightly smaller
I
than
can't-
Blythe. I think they're similar.
I think Blythe has.
But they also have
Central's larger.
far more students in those classes than any of those other schools. And so while, yes, we might be doing that, and we're doing this, and I completely support what we're doing at all the other schools. But I mean, this isn't really going to help Hollywood unless we move people across the street, because we still have these huge balloon class sizes, these large class sizes.
I wonder, Martha, I know we have a significant number of our children from our district in our Ladzy classroom, but if we are desperate for classroom size, is it our opportunity to offer another district a chance to hold that space? Because it's been many years now that we've held the space
Something
here.
that we talk about at Ladzy annually.
Is
Those
anyone
are
else
almost all
interested in
District
doing
96
it?
students.
Right.
No, part of the problem with the Ladzy districts is everybody's very maxed out.
Because it's been many years now and we're
yeah.
really tight with
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
And I struggle because we have a high proportion of kids of our own district, and I would not want to bust them around just because. I'm just wondering.
I think many of those Ladzy agreements stay stable, particularly when it's a high number from a district. So I think they try not to have it frequently rotating classroom setup. It is something that's
I
talked
know,
about
but it's been
annually. They are in
multiple years
search of
now,
space
so
every
it
single year.
would be a good question to look at, maybe to
Yeah.
see how enrollment is next year. But
David's point is good with regards to Hollywood and the fewer or larger number of kids per square foot students. One thing that I think we need to remember is every one of our schools is set up so differently. I mean, we've got Central's the biggest one, 3 classrooms per grade, plus the capacity to serve as a surge school. Ames is tight and was tight for a long time. Hollywood and Blythe, equally 1-section classrooms right now. And we make, to come back to it is, we make trade-offs no matter what.
Right.
You can either have, and not to, we can allow for neighborhood schools and have bigger class sizes, or you can start shipping kids around. And it's a balancing act every year, as Martha knows. That's why we've got so many different requests to go here or there. And I don't know that there's not a policy answer towards this. We are in a unique situation every year.
No,
You're right, and it's, the First Avenue challenge is huge for Hollywood.
No, and I appreciate it, and I understand each school has unique, but I guess what I was addressing to is that Hollywood's getting 2 extra classrooms. That's great, but we're not going to be splitting those kids between those 2 classrooms. I mean, we're still going to be keeping them in one classroom.
Yeah. No,
and
and
so, and I guess that's what I'm trying to emphasize here is that while we're getting 2 extra classrooms, we still have a small
Where's the
footprint.
2 coming from?
3 extra classrooms.
Are you referring to the multipurpose
I think
room
so.
as a
One is
classroom?
already there.
So what I'm comparing is when we started on the board, the preschool was at Hollywood. That took
Right.
2 classrooms. There are 9 classrooms at Hollywood. That took 2 was for what was. So of the K through 5 at Hollywood had access to 7 classrooms. When we moved the preschool from Hollywood to Blythe, that freed, and then moved Ladsey to Hollywood, that freed up 1 classroom. So we went from 7 to 8. Now if we move Ladsey to Central, that'll free up another classroom. So that's 2 classrooms. We went from 7 to 9. And then if in addition we build the multi-purpose room, that's another room. That's 10, actually 3 extra classrooms. So you go from 7 to 10, which
But-
is
but
almost a 50% increase.
Where I disagree a little bit is that the itinerant space is lacking at Hollywood, and there's things happening on the stage. Those classrooms are actually going to be used.
Yeah, can you tell us what you would use the spaces for that we would be changing?
I'd rather do that at a time when we can pull up the floor plan. If that,
You don't
know,
have, can you give me a basic idea? Is it for a class? Is it for a special? Is it for
So
small
obviously
group?
all the
You know?
K through 5 gen education classrooms, and then special education, part of the special education resource room is actually going to be taken away with the front office reconfiguration. So again, it's making sure that special education has a classroom. Right now, art and music share a
Wouldn't
classroom.
that be in the existing principal's office space? Is that where you're moving it?
That's going to be the small group itinerant space.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Right.
again, it's where it starts to get complicated without the floor plan in front of me, so I guess I'd rather wait, and if you want that level of detail, we can do it at a time when we can
Well,
all
it's
share
kind
the
of a
floor
big
plan.
detail, but yeah, soon, please.
I'm struggling a bit with how I'm being treated here tonight.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell though if we don't
Right,
know
but-
what's
but-
intended. You know what I mean? Because I
No.
totally agree. You can't have children on the stage. That's ridiculous.
No, I understand, but so as a we're about to go into our board superintendent, agreements later, and no surprises is one of them. And
Right.
and this wasn't this is not the item we're talking about. So I
Right.
agree with Martha that we need to put that on the next committee of the whole meeting under facilities and have this conversation because it's hard to
Oh,
answer.
I'm not the one that brought up the conversation.
Oh, I'm not. I'm
yeah.
not. I'm just talking.
But if we want to talk, I'm happy to talk about, if we're talking about the MOU though, what space we need is important. So I think that's very relevant.
I think we've got off a little off of the agenda topic.
Little
I
bit off.
100%
So
agree.
why don't we go back to the MOU?
Yes.
Yes.
I guess, Dan, if you don't mind me asking if anyone has any more questions about the MOU,
All right.
I'm fine with that.
Does anyone have any more questions on the MOU? All right, Margie, can you call the roll?
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
A nay.
Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right. Next item is the stipend proposal. So that is, I move the Board of Education approve the stipend proposal for 2019-2020 as presented. Do we have a motion to approve the stipend proposal?
So moved.
Second.
All right, should we have discussion?
So let me insert right away. We did change the format here with the feedback we had from the board. I asked Jim to take another look at the format, and there is a revision to the format. Where we really ended our conversation last time was, should the board establish whether a minimum and maximum in terms of dollars or in terms of just quantity of co-curricular activities? My understanding is that the board said, let's move forward with kind of the process that was current at the time. So as you know, we meet with the REC Stipend Committee and did that in June. So I do welcome board feedback around kind of whether it's a minimum maximum dollar amount or a minimum maximum, in terms of co-curriculars per school. But for heading into the 1920 school year, it felt that our process was far enough along that we would move this forward. I had talked about math club and some additional club at Central. That was something that the board had asked why there weren't more activities at some of the other schools. So there are 2 additions to that in terms of the Best Buddies Illinois at Central School and the math club additions that are listed at Blythe Central and had previously been listed, Ames, Blythe, and Central had previously been listed only as a Hollywood club.
Best Buddies is fantastic, and from the Hauser experience, I'm really excited to see that at Central. I think that's amazing. So thank you for whatever teacher or principal offered to do that. It's a tremendous program.
And I think the other component of that was at current, or what will be this fall, and then some level attempted projection of attendance, just to get a feel for the per student cost or for enrollment for the cost and stuff like that.
I just have one question about the sheet that I noticed this time. When we're looking under athletics, the intramurals, the number has gone up significantly. The quantity, and I'm assuming.
I'm sorry, what page is it?
I'm so sorry, let me find, let's see, this, I believe it's the second page. Right before athletics subtotal, it has boys intramural sponsor, assistant sponsor, girls intramural sponsor, assistant sponsor.
Can you look at that, Jim? That went up since the last time we looked at it?
No, actually those were they are up from last year, the projection. I think when we were looking at the spreadsheet last time, that's where the numbers, we were trying to figure out where that jump was, and that's where it is, and I was just curious if we...
Can I jump in?
Sure.
I think, if I may paraphrase, for example, Martha, if you look at the girls intramural sponsor in 2018 and 19, it says there was a quantity of 18, and the 2019 to 2020 quantity is 85. And it just seems
I'm wondering if we
that's
have
an
an
odd
error
jump.
in the,
Yeah, that isn't weird.
Yeah, I just...
And it could be a spreadsheet error.
And I'm sorry I didn't catch this earlier. I
No,
literally just saw it because I was scrolling down.
Is
So I would
that
have...
what you're looking at?
Yeah. And I don't know if that means it's been added to other schools possibly, or...
No, there's not. It's only a Hauser activity, so I'm also, I would have to look into that, and maybe we can review the spreadsheet again. And the intramurals, okay.
Is it
I mean, the math is right, but...
Right, but is the quantity
Yeah, the quantity does seem off, I agree. So I suppose we could move to approve it with revisions if needed in the intramural area?
Yeah, but, I mean, I certainly don't. I don't want to not approve.
Right. Actually, this one could wait until August if need be. I mean, I think our agreement is we inform staff members who are supervising and participating by the, and, you know.
And
just
I'm
before the
okay
beginning
with
of school year.
approving with clarification. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with it. I just, for some reason, that just caught my eye, and I thought, oh, I don't remember why that was. But
Would we need to, if we were to approve it with revisions, would we need to read it differently?
We could just change the action, or the motion to approve it with revisions to intramurals after a review. Something like that.
I'm looking at the spreadsheet too. I mean, I appreciate you pointing that out, but the math isn't even right on it.
It's,
So
but
maybe.
why the jump in the quantity?
Yeah, even with the quantity, the math's not right.
I know.
So, there might be a spreadsheet error.
That is strange.
again, I apologize. I just saw this. So.
Yeah,
No,
I didn't notice
And
it before, so-
I didn't
Yeah.
want to not
Yeah.
say it, so
I mean, the other idea is we bring it back to the August meeting. Maybe that's better.
I certainly don't want to hold up the process, though.
Well,
so.
let me ask, to sort of on this point, can we maybe just take the intramurals out and vote to approve?
Approve without the intramural agreement?
Yeah.
That'd probably be better, then we could go ahead and communicate to the other
Yeah,
clubs and
I
activity
don't want to slow
sponsors and
anything of this
supervisors.
process down
Yeah.
by any stretch.
Yeah. That might be the better motion, essentially.
All right. So let's see. So is there a motion to approve the stipend proposal excluding the intramural?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion at this point? Are we ready to vote? Margie, can you call the roll?
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, next item is the Lansing DuPage West Cook Intergovernmental Agreement. Is there a motion to approve the Lansing DuPage West Cook Intergovernmental Agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
What's the basic change here? I mean, I did read the summary, but if we could maybe...
Cleanup of obsolete language and some language around an independent district being, having access to programs and services. So it's pretty
Minor
minimal,
changes.
yeah, but it is required as is shared in the memo.
It's much more of an administrative and language than intent kind of a change.
Any further discussion? All right, Margie, can you call the roll?
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, next item is discussion of the district's offer to purchase the Hollywood Citizens Association property. I think we have a resolution to approve here. We need a motion to discuss it.
No real motion. It was really just the best place to put it on the agenda that since we'd made the offer on the Hollywood Citizens Association property, I know we haven't heard back formally. We certainly heard through the landmark that, there's been some offense taken as well as some support, both in terms of varying positions on the board's offer. I think there was also sort of a question about understanding kind of all that we had considered and pursued in terms of addressing that space. So we've been really clear, I know all along throughout our long-range facility planning process, that separating play and parking has been one of our goals. And that doing that on the Hollywood school property is a significant challenge. Again, our goal was not to purchase the Hollywood house to build a parking lot, but to improve the site overall. And so I think that there was some interest from the board of just kind of having a conversation about the options that we've considered and the potential site improvements, and making sure that there was a kind of a shared community understanding of some of our goals and objectives in the process.
Yeah, so, I know I appreciate the introduction. I know there's been a lot of discussion, both pro and con.
Can you try to speak up a little bit, because I
Can
see
you hear me?
people leaning in.
There's been a lot of discussion, both pro and con, for our actions to try to purchase the property. And I guess what I would like to propose to the board, and to you, Martha, because you need to present this on our behalf, but I'd like to take our ideas that we have, because we've spent, like I said, we've spent close to $10,000 on coming up with designs on how we can keep the Hollywood house and do all that we need to do at the school. And it's just not, we're not getting everything we need without the whole property. And so what I'd like to do is have a community forum to show what we're looking to do. I'd also like to, the HCA, because I know the HCA has told us that they have presented us a number of ideas on that we've supposedly all rejected, but I'd like them to also present their ideas on what can be done with the property. We've obviously spent a lot of money on this, and I'd like to show the community our ideas, and I'd like the HCA to show us their ideas, like architectural drawings, and how we can build this out, given like underground utilities, water, all the constraints that we have, and keep the house.
I'd like to just make a comment there that's a little bit tangential to that. I agree with what you're saying. Both of your suggestions, I think, are good suggestions to have a community forum to talk about these things and a number of that idea. And also hearing from HCA, what ideas do you have? I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I'd like to talk about, though, something else, which is yet another possibility, which I think has a lot of merit, and that is some time ago, the Village of Brookfield approached our administration, and I think it might have been the assistant manager, Martha could maybe say exactly, and proposed that we move our parking to a strip of land that Brookfield owns along the zoo parking lot. So that would be north of the road where all the RV parking is. It's on a sort of a lane that goes back toward the zoo. There's no residence. The residence that's quite adjacent to there is owned by the zoo. So no one would be impacted negatively, as far as I can tell, in the Hollywood community. And I think we initially expressed a lot of interest, and then Brookfield said, if I remember correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong, Martha, on this, they said, we don't want to get into a fight between you and the HCA. Why don't you talk to the HCA about this? And that's when we started to talk to the HCA, and then we ultimately culminated in this offer to buy it. But in my view, part of the problem we have at the Hollywood site is that's a small lot, regardless of whether the HCA is there or not there. It's a small combined lot, HCA and Hollywood. And if we are to devote a third or more of that lot to parking, a third or more of the lot, outside of the school itself, that's just a loss right there. That's just a loss of useful space for the kids, for trees, for grass, for playgrounds, for all the other things we could be doing. For the HCA house, I mean, keep the HCA house there as far as there's value to that history. So I think that the option that we should seriously contemplate right now is joining forces with the Hollywood community, with the HCA, and going back to the Village of Brookfield and asking them, say, can we acquire this lot that you mentioned to us and develop that as a parking lot and put all the parking there? And that frees up a tremendous amount of space that could be then used for the kids, which I think is much better than used for cars. So I think that's something I think that I would like to propose that the board consider as a maybe even a better option than acquiring that property.
Well, I do remember the village coming to us and talking to us about that. However, we never expended a lot of time on that in the designs. And so I don't know, I would say let's see how many parking spots we can put there. I don't know how many we can put there. I don't know if we'll have enough parking spots.
I thought we did have some detail about that.
There was some detail.
Yeah.
It does not accommodate the entire parking
We'd
that
need
we
some
have
street
at
parking,
the
I think.
school, but it does give us more options and provides a little bit more room for creativity on what we could possibly consider a combined Hollywood house and Hollywood school campus.
I know I've been on the minority on this, but I've never wanted to buy property to put parking, and I seem like I'm the minority, but I would only want it for children's use or the community use. It's ridiculous to buy it and put up parking.
But we're not buying it to put up parking. We're buying it, we're moving the parking.
I would love to move those parking spaces off to the Brookfield spot. I think that's wonderful.
Then that's going to be the only school in the district that has parking off-site. Okay.
Well,
and I mean, I just.
It's not unusual.
But that's good. That's a positive. I was thinking you move a few parking off-site for Central. I'd say, great, do it.
I understand, but I guess the thing is, what I'm trying to say is, that I do think that's a very good second option. If the HCA does not want to sell to us and the community says no, they don't like our design proposals, and this HCA says no, then you know what? Let's engage Brookfield. Let's engage seeing how many parking spaces we can get there, how many parking spaces we can get on the street, and take parking off the property. Okay, that is fine with me. For me, that's a good second option. The best option I still feel is that we move the parking around, not just add parking. We're moving parking, and expand the playground, expand the playgrounds and the school. So I'm okay pursuing both, but we need to get like Ramesh, and we need to do proper drawings and figure out how much space we're going to get, and we need to approach Brookfield. Okay.
I would suggest that we need to have that order reversed, and that we need to approach Brookfield and determine if there's a willingness there for them to sell to us. I guess my biggest concern is I've never quite understood why they approached us and offered us the property
and then took it away.
The reason we didn't go into it much is because almost as quickly as it.
So I would actually go even one step further back, which is we should talk to the HCA, we should talk to the Hollywood community and say, hey guys, what do you think about this idea? And if they're supportive, then we collectively go to the Village of Brookfield, because they actually are residents there, many of them.
But Jeff, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. But we made an offer. We've got drawings. We've got drawings that we can show. I don't want to be going, I'm saying, let's take this, let's play this card out, let's play this out, see where this goes, and then go to Plan B.
But I don't have drawings
was-
I don't have drawings for the whole property.
I was not here when that
That's not
decision
true.
was taken, so I was never on board with that decision.
I was
So I
never
know it
on
was
board
taken,
to begin with.
but, and I know, I'm not saying we should, and I'm not criticizing that decision, but I think that it's just, without having any drawings, you could say that if we don't have a parking lot there, we are going to have more space
Right.
for the kids than if we do have a parking lot. There's no need for drawings. I
No,
guess that's
and I guess
sort
the
of
thing
a-
is, this is where I'm getting frustrated right now, is that we've bought two pieces of property for Ames. We bought property to move the district offices out of Central without any plans. And now we're going down this path with Hollywood, where we want plans. This board's asking for, or you're asking for plans of what we're going to do.
No, I didn't ask for plans. You asked for plans.
No, I didn't ask for any plans.
The district
I
office
didn't ask
doesn't
for
require
plans.
plans. It was an existing building.
But we don't, but we don't know what we're going to do with it. We don't know what we're going to do with the space down at Central. I mean, we don't know how when we bought the property, we didn't know what we were going to be doing with that space. We didn't know how we were going to be building out Ames.
Could I take a slightly different
I don't- no,
claim on that? I
that's-
think
I
with
agree with
Ames,
that.
we bought those properties for specific reasons. We had to buy that second property if we wanted to move the preschool there. We
That's
had
right.
to do that, because otherwise we would not have had enough space to build there.
There's no
I
way
didn't
to
want
move the
I didn't want to
preschool.
buy the
I
property.
know.
We had to do it.
So-
With the central, the Harlem property for the central office, I didn't want to buy that
And it
property.
does not
But if
work
we
at
wanted to
Hollywood
decouple
to put
and
the preschool
Hauser
there.
and Central, we had to do that. Those were not like optional. Those were like, if we want to do this, we had to do that. In the case of Hollywood, I'm not asking for plans. I'm saying, hey, you're just here's a way to free up a lot of space by acquiring space from Brookfield that's not being used for anything else, that would not negatively impact anyone as far as I can tell. And that would be good for the students of Hollywood. They would have more green space. They would have more trees. They have more grass. They have more playground, or whatever good thing that we can do. They would have more of that.
I think we're kind of getting in circles
Next.
here, but, and I'm jumping in. David's thought of, we've spent upwards of a few years, more years than I remember perhaps, where the Hollywood School, call it District 96, and HCA haven't known how to talk to each other. This offer was a legitimate offer, but it was also made with the intent to start a conversation. So here's the beginning of our conversation. We can now go to a forum, an open forum, and have loud, vehement conversations with and among ourselves, with Hollywood House being a partner. Hollywood House has said in very explicit black and white words, HCA board is committed to District 96's goal of separating parking from play, providing space for building expansion and a new playground at Hollywood, while maintaining the HCA's goal of preserving green space and its mission and heritage. The struggle is always in the details, and now we need to sit down with HCA and talk and present drawings, some of which the civil engineer provided to show how much parking could go there. We can talk to HCA and perhaps pursue, as Jeff said, additional parking off-site on that access road. We've got an opportunity here to actually talk. We've started that. Obviously, these are hard conversations. I can fully support David's idea of let's sit down and talk. Let's have an open forum.
Can I
Just
say something, please?
Go ahead.
So, I want to echo what Joel's saying. This is a great situation to have the conversation now. We haven't, for some reason, been able to have the conversation publicly, openly with the community. I'm not a Hollywood resident. I didn't really know what people felt about the property. I have no idea, and this is why we did that, because we wanted to hear. We have heard. It is not clear-cut by any stretch. There's people on every side of everything, but we do know that we have the shared mission of making the school a better place for our students. Everybody in this room and everybody in the community, the whole district has that. So now we have the opportunity to have this conversation openly and come to some sort of compromise that works for everybody. I really feel like we had to go there to have the conversation started, and I really appreciate the conversation, because As a non-Hollywood resident, I wouldn't know. I'm not a part of the HCA. I have no idea. So now we're getting community input. There's options. None of it's going to be easy, but there's options, and we need to figure out the best option for the community, for the HCA, for the school district,
Right.
and
So I think
execute
that
as partners.
What you're saying is absolutely right. I think your points are well taken. I think Joel's points are well taken, and David's points are well taken. The only thing I would say is that we should be very explicit that we're not just talking to the HCA. HCA is part of the story. This is the Hollywood community. I know that when they came to the high school parking lot, the Hollywood community was up in arms because of where they were going to configure that for obvious reasons. It was right in front of their doorstep, right next to the Hollywood school. And so we were upset. Here, I think it's the opposite. Here, I think, again, I'm not a Hollywood resident, so I could be wrong. I think this is a situation where they would say, this is great because we're moving parking to a place we're not going to see it. We're not going to increase traffic. We're going to free up space for our kids. I think it's the opposite situation of what the high school parking lot was. So I think this is, and so we should engage the community and the HCA and
Well, to your point, Jeff, I mean, the HCA has told us repeatedly that they have options for us, and and as Joel mentioned in their article, let's see the drawings. Let's see what their options are, because right now we've looked at a lot of options, and I'd be interested to see what those options are. I'd like to see legitimate drawings of what we can do and how many spaces we can put in there.
Can we, on that basis, ask Martha as our District 96 representative to engage with HCA and figure out a good time to have this conversation? Open house, whatever you want to call it.
I'd support that.
yeah, conversation with HCA to say, what do you think about this idea, and what are some other ideas you might have? And
I
and
know
go
we've
forward
always
like
at
that.
least been inviting them to meetings, and we've tried to go. If they have a meeting, it's just hard, but they haven't had meetings lately, but, because it's summer, but, yeah.
Pause.
I'm certainly open.
I'm just sort of waiting.
I'm certainly open to being the spokesperson for that conversation. We have had some conversations, and I do know one of the ideas that they've talked about is also just playing to the west of the building. And I just want to share too, I think it's important sort of publicly to share that part just logistically from a principal's perspective is not a safe space because it's a corner. And we're, perhaps with fencing and other things, and again, I think all of these things are part of the conversation of where do children play in the way that feels most safe and secure? Where does parking really belong in terms of, is it, on that village property? Is it sort of kind of further, squeezed in really on the overall HCA Hollywood site? Hollywood, HCA had talked with us about parking to the east of the building. That's really what started this whole analysis and exploration. And that's where we learned that between stormwater management, green space requirements, and underground utilities, that was not as simple as we initially thought. So just, I know I'm repeating some of the things that everyone has already said. But
I
think all
remember
those
hearing
things
about the play to the west, though, so that's interesting. I know you'd probably need, something because they're on the corner, but that's interesting.
Your turn?
Weston,
Can I
do you
go?
have something to say? You just have to raise your hand like I kept doing.
Yeah, I almost like
I took your
I'm
moment
back in
to pause
school,
here.
right?
Yeah.
No, you're fine. No, I just kind of, I guess, an interesting side note. I know this is a pretty emotional topic for a lot of people, and you guys have been working on this a lot longer than I have, but there's just been an interesting level of hostility on a number of topics tonight, and kind of jumping in on top of each other. But I guess I don't think I'm going to say anything new. I think I agree with and disagree with maybe a lot of the points that are on the table right now, but coincidentally, I was going to say exactly what Dave said. I actually posed this to Martha the other day about, I thought, Linda, when you and Rich posed the idea of having the town hall sessions, I think at Hollywood we had particularly high attendance compared to the rest
Probably
of them.
percentage-wise,
Outside
right?
of
Yeah.
those out of those morning sessions anyway.
Even the evening session, Hollywood was more represented.
Well,
than
I think a
anything.
couple of them came back for a
Yeah.
second round that
Yeah.
week. So it seems to me like throwing that out there and doing it specifically in conjunction with the HCA. So just in my observation of attending as an audience member and now attending as a board member, a lot of the dialogue that I'm, I guess, essentially reading about, because there's been 2 press releases and we sent an offer and we said why, and both of the responses, and what a handful of we got a number of people that were for it, we've had a number of people against it. The common theme that I've seen of against it is don't bulldoze a house to build a parking lot, which is not the intent, and that is to be a playground and play space and get rid of the parking lot. Jeff, I agree with you. I mean, if we could put parking somewhere else and we could do both of those things, that's even better. That's even more space that we can use.
Potentially better. We haven't.
Potentially
it
better.
hasn't been
Yeah,
studied
yeah.
yet, but yes.
Yeah, thank you. Potentially better. But just from the design options, the 3 or 4 design options we've seen, I mean, those are all terrible options. And to me, it's a waste of our money to try to fit the puzzle piece in there. So we need something better than what we have. I don't know what that final outcome is, but the options we have in front of us are not, in my opinion, viable. So I personally think the next step is doing like a town hall or whatever we want to call it, open forum, in tandem with the HCA, hopefully get the community engaged. We've had very, limited presence in dialogue we've had here. We've had pretty limited email communication for the most part, at least that I've seen around this topic. So I don't know how the Hollywood community was going to respond to it. I'm also not a Hollywood community member. And I still don't really feel like I understand where the Hollywood community stands on the whole thing. So hopefully we get a good attendance on it and at least get that dialogue going and be able to engage people in a different forum that we really can't do in this setting. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
I think the newspaper article is really the only thing I've seen formally from the HCA. It'd be nice to.
And we don't have a formal response
Other than
yet,
the
so.
newspaper article, that's the first thing we heard, so that would be nice to have an actual response.
Yeah.
I think a community forum would be great because in a board meeting, we can't have a dialogue. Even we can sit here and talk amongst us and have conversation.
Right, that's why
the
we
community
tried to
can
get
have a
them here.
comment, but we don't get to interact. So
Right.
I do think, not that the 7 board members couldn't be there interacting, because that's against OMA as well, but
Put our private
but we could quietly sit in the back and listen to the conversation.
Well, but in an open forum where the public is there,
You're allowed to be
No,
present.
you can't.
We're allowed to be
listen.
present.
confer as
We
board
can't talk
members.
about
we can't
school,
confer as
school
board
district.
members, but we can talk to the public, not as.
Not when all 7 of us are in a room.
You can sit and listen.
Because you are having school board
It's an
conversation.
OMA requirement, yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it would have to be posted as a board meeting.
Which we can do that
Well,
too. We
then
can
we
make
could
something
post
special.
it. We could post it as a board meeting, and that's
But doesn't that limit our
It would be my
engagement?
intent that we could.
Right, but as a board
Post as
meeting,
a
then
special meeting with sort of special
Post
rules
it
of
as a
order.
Yeah, we
special
would have to
meeting at
eventually,
this
yeah.
location, and
we just want to make sure that we provide an
that we
opportunity to
fit.
have the conversation as opposed to you listening to us, we listen to you, and then
Yeah.
a month goes by, and then you listen to us, and we listen to you, and then
2 years go
you know,
by.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I do think. I mean, is I'll use your word hostile, or like the conversation could be. I think we're actually, in my opinion, at a really great place where we're actually going to have the conversation publicly and openly, and be able to make decisions in conjunction with the ACA or HCA, and in the best interest of the students and the community as a whole. Like that's where we're going to get a win for everybody, is if we're doing this together. So I'm hoping that by maybe being a little bold, we've created a conversation. So that's all I got to say. My hands down now.
I do agree, and you make a very good point. There has been a lot of conversation going on behind the scenes probably since before any of us have been on the board.
I'm sure. I think
and it is good to have it out in the open, good to have these options and these discussion points that we've been talking about for so long amongst ourselves out to the public to get an idea about what are the community's opinions and thoughts on this idea.
And whatever side you fall on, I think everybody's intentions are very good. It's not like, like everybody has really valid points and I think has the best interest in mind. So let's work together and find a great solution.
I do wonder, though, in the way we've described it and discussed it.
That sounded so nice to end.
I'm sorry.
I was joking.
I'll pass it to you for
Yeah,
that.
it was a joke. Trying to line it up. It's a joke.
But along those lines, we've talked about engaging the HCA as part of this discussion. Would we want to have the Village of Brookfield, or at least invite the Village of Brookfield as part of discussing Jeff's idea as well, or is that something that should be happening separate? Or is that something that potentially happens after this community forum?
My thought was that we could collectively, that is to say, if the community and the HCA were in agreement that this was a good avenue to pursue, we would jointly go before the Village of Brookfield and say, hey, this is something we would collectively like to do, because if the school district's behind it, most of the community's behind it, the HCA's behind it, I think that gives us a stronger hand than if any sort of individual interest has behind it. So I would sort of say, let's all get on the same page, and then if we are on the same page, then we could go to Brookfield and.
So have the community forum first, before you would go and approach the village.
That's one way to do it, yeah.
I guess a part of that concerns me a little is that it has been mentioned, we really haven't paid a lot of attention. We paid zero attention in terms of design or schematics or have an idea what we would do with that property,
Do with what property?
with the Brookfield property.
We did it.
No,
we did it.
that's not-
So what I would
no,
just
we
say
have
is
the
we did it
drawing.
conceptually.
We have one, right?
What we have
Yeah.
learned about, what I've
we
learned about
have
sort of all of
something.
these is that underground utility. We know we know there are utilities. We'd have to move utilities. We don't know what's underground, what's above ground. We know there are trees that would have to be moved. So again, those are analyses through specific studies that we learn sort of the feasibility of those things. So whether or not we would want to do some of the feasibility studies, similar to what we did with the HCA property, before approaching the village to make sure that it would truly meet our needs. I mean, conceptually, it seems like it would and should and could, but again, we've been surprised with other things as we've learned through the kind of civil engineering review that it's sometimes not as easy as it looks on the surface. Quite literally.
I would suggest that we go through that process so that we know what we're dealing with, because like the article mentioned, HCA was talking about the property land of east of the house. Well, you come back, it's not going to work out.
Not the way we had originally.
Exactly. So I would almost
conceived
suggest that we
the idea.
spend the money and get a formal study done to make sure that what we're thinking of for that area, so we know how many car spaces we are actually going to be short, and we'll know what this would cost us, and having a rough idea of what
That's definitely one way to do it, and there are advantages to doing that. I mean, that way you kind of do know if it's feasible and what it's going to cost, but I don't like spending money if we don't. I mean, what if we go and people don't like it? What if people are not behind it? Then we probably won't pursue it, right? It'll be harder to pursue on our own than if we have a community behind it. So I don't want to spend a lot of money, coming up with plans and feasibility studies, and then find out that this is not something that people are going to support. I just don't want to spend even more.
But at the same token, I don't want to be going down a rabbit hole of saying, oh, this is going to solve our problems.
And then we can't do it.
And we can't
And
do
then,
it.
for one reason or another, it doesn't work out.
Well, we have something from before. It may not have the exact numbers, but if we could pull that up again, it would be
Well,
extremely.
does
it have the exact number of spots? Because people are saying it didn't say the number, and I thought
Well, no,
it
showed
gave us
the
an
number of spots. I don't
idea.
know. The question is whether I don't know if there's underground utilities. I mean, those
Right,
things.
that's-
Really,
That's the thing, we don't know
only
what's involved.
Right.
the issues that are still outstanding on that would be deal breakers is stormwater and utilities. We could get a preliminary and not very costly report on that.
Yeah, if it's not expensive, then we can certainly do it. But I wouldn't want to spend $10,000.
Right. I was thinking the same thing.
The utilities issue is simply someone needs to go out and mark where the site is and call up the utility companies, and they will mark for free the site. The stormwater is a slightly different issue, but
Right.
Because one of the issues we had was, isn't there a pretty major, I don't remember the details of the discussion, but one of the main lines coming into the property was like
when the utilities, and I'm talking about the parking
The
on
parking.
Yeah, but like-
Hollywood.
if you do that, if you just do like the basic Julie markings and stuff, will it uncover like,
Legally, they have to.
well, I know, but
The only
You called
thing
them out and
Julie
had 'em-
won't cover would be some private fiber companies.
okay. Would they be able to tell us if it's just basic electrical lines running versus like a major transmission line? They would, okay.
Well, but then obviously we would need to get the permission of the village before
Right.
we did anything like that.
That's
Because if they're not on board, the whole
I mean,
thing
that's a
is.
very good point. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves with the village, even if we want it, even if the community wants it, even if the HCA wants it. The village might say, no, we're not going to do it. So we want to spend a ton of money.
It would be ultimately up to the Village Board of Brookfield.
Exactly. We need a collective buy-in
to
from-
determine whether or not it is an area that we could be allowed to improve,
Right.
or even an area that we would be allowed to purchase. So that is ultimately Village Brookfield's decision.
Right.
Okay.
So it sounds like a town hall first, and then some follow-up analyses. And I know because that area was not that exact area, but some of that area was studied, because it does directly link to the Riverside Brookfield High School parking area. So there may be some details and information we would be able to gather in a less expensive way.
A town hall formatted in such a way that we can meet our OMA obligations. And if that simply requires an announcement that it's a special meeting, then so be
Okay,
it.
I'll look into the procedural pieces for that.
Okay, any further discussion?
Are we allowed to maybe potentially do public comment now and then do our additional other part after the public
I would
comment?
think so.
Yeah, it might be relevant, yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
do we need to make a motion to change that or just? No.
Change the order of the agenda.
Dan, do you want to change the order of the agenda?
Great idea.
Yeah, I think they would
Alright.
appreciate that too, not having to wait around.
Yeah. All right, so I think per agreement from the board, we are going to reopen the public comment section. So is there any public comment? We have two folks signed up previously.
Yes, sir, this is my first time done this, so
I apologize,
Come to
could
that
you step up to the mic?
Yeah, state your
when
name
does
and.
the time start?
And just state your name and address, please.
All right, first of all, my name is Michael Case. In 3 weeks, I'm going to be, I know Hollywood. It'll be my 67th year living in Hollywood. In fact, one house down from the house that I was born in South Hollywood section. I am a Hollywood school graduate as well, as are two other siblings of mine. My mother was deeply involved with Hollywood School. In fact, as an educator, I just retired a little while back, so 32 years at Community District 99 in Downers Grove as a history teacher. My mother was very involved with that school, so much, and again, we loved the school. So much so that when she passed, the Case family and my mother's name gave a considerable amount of money to Hollywood School to use for artistic purposes for the kids. That money went to, under Kurth, who was PTA president at that time, just asked me what we should do with it, and I said, let the kids play with it. So what they did with that money is they created a water garden and a sculpture. That water garden has since turned into a monarch garden, which I got involved with and asked the principal to do that. There was extra money left over, and Kurth said that with that extra money, would it be good for the playground? And as the Case family person said, absolutely, put it in the playground, which I understand Hollywood House owns. Okay, just thought I'd throw that out there. My concern is this. I am a taxpayer, right? There's 490 households that represent Hollywood. That's 77%, or 30-some percent, go to Hollywood School. Out of that, in other words, 70% do not, 30% do. So you are, as a board, you have just said to me, well, I really don't know what Hollywood is like. I've heard this, and what bothers me is you're making decisions with our 70% of the tax money that you don't know anything about. That's very concerning to me. Secondly, I was very impressed with the young man that sat here and said, you know what, there's a historic value to preserving the front of the school. Yet, I've heard nothing from this board about preserving the historic value of Hollywood House. I had an article today put into the local newspaper discussing the names associated with Hollywood House. And I just wonder, as I said in the paper, if you went to Riverside and said, you know what, these streetlights, pain in the butt, they don't light up the streets. Let's tear them down. The front of your school, which is so beautiful. So we put a big ramp up there, but you cared about that, didn't you? And then when you start talking about Oak Park or destroying some of their homes. I just wonder, and by the way, you said there's no mention of tearing it down and putting a parking lot up. There's no mention that you wouldn't. So my concern is, yes, I think you're Mr. Miller, you are my new best friend. I like your thoughts, I like the way you're thinking. I think it's a beautiful way to look at a wonderful compromise. I don't know if Brookville will let you do it, I hope they do. But I think that would solve the situation, absolutely. I just wish in your hearts that you would, by the way, I open invitation to Hollywood, come to my house. I live at 8509 Greenview, Brookfield, Illinois, Hollywood. Oh, by the way, on my tax bill it says Hollywood. Just share that with you, it says Hollywood. And we are the original Hollywood. So there's some history here that I want you as a board to understand is relevant. Just as Riverside sees Olmsted as being relevant, Frank Lloyd Wright. Oh, by the way, Hollywood House was designed in part by an associate of Frank Lloyd Wright.
So let's look at the history of that building before you start making decisions, because it's important to people who live in Hollywood, like me, for 67 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Next we have Glenn Krefka? Kleka. My apologies. Had 2 shots at it, didn't get it.
Glenn Kleka, 3640 McCormick, Brookfield, Illinois, Hollywood, Illinois, the oldest Hollywood in the United States. We are responsible for naming Hollywood, California. Many years ago, Hollywood, California tried to trademark the name of Hollywood. We fought them. We won. Don't fight with us too bad. Hollywood Community House does own the driveway that leads into your parking lot. If we put up a chain, you have no use of that parking lot. I believe we have a legal agreement or a lease between us for 99 years where we can use it when you're not in session. You can use our driveway whenever you want. At one point, we put up a chain and a lock on there. You couldn't get to your parking lot. Your playground is on Hollywood Community House property. We helped pay for that, for the playground equipment that you have on our land. We are there for the children. We are there for the community. Please work together with us. Don't tear our house down. Yes, I like your comments. Have an open session. Find out about it. Brookfield, I was on the committee with Riverside Brookfield High School when they decided if they should redo their building or if they should build a new building. They were going to put up a 4-story schoolhouse on what is now their football field, the stadium area. That did not go through. They put in AstroTurf and everything like that. They tried to get additional parking. They closed Rosemere. It is not accessible from Hollywood Avenue. They put a cul-de-sac there. They closed the street off and gained 22 parking spots. Brookfield was willing to close the street. The street you're referring to that is going into the zoo, that is the zoo entrance for their equipment. They were the ones that would not allow Brookfield to let you or anybody buy that property. They will not close that street. The zoo wants to keep that as an entrance and exit for their equipment of access of trucks, because you know how busy Gulf Road is, the road that leads to the south entrance of the zoo. You will not get that property, even though they own the 3 houses that are right up against that road. The zoo will not give that to you. The zoo allows us to use their parking facility for RB High School. At one point, they wanted to put up a 3-story parking garage there, and we were the school district was willing to pay for part of that to be built. That didn't go through. The zoo didn't want us to put it there. Our baseball field is on zoo property. The front of our RB High School is all Forest Preserve District. I was on that committee, so I learned all these things. They only own 5 feet behind the school, 5 feet in front of the school. Beyond that, it's all Forest Preserve property. So if you want to get more land, talk to the Forest Preserve District. Maybe they'll let you put some parking there or that or whatever. Maybe you could put diagonal parking along Hollywood Avenue, along where they redesigned the tennis courts. When they were doing the reconstruction at RB High School, they didn't know what to do with that land north of the school. You could have put a driveway there into your parking lot. You would have had access to your parking lot. You could have put that as grassy area or whatever, but no one spoke to the high school or whatever. You have to communicate with everybody. Hollywood Community Association is very close-knit. We fought 5-story buildings that wanted to go up. You can't build higher than 2 stories high in Hollywood. It's a close-knit community. Learn how we are. Enjoy it. Get to talk to us. An open forum would be great. Thank you.
Do we have any further public comment?
I didn't sign up. Can I sign up?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Steve Petrus, and my wife and I have lived in Hollywood a little over 41 years now. 2 of our kids went to Hollywood. Our daughter's a nurse. Our son got great education. He went to the Naval Academy. He's a pilot now. Our grandchild just recently finished up going to Hollywood. Again, got a great education. He's going to the University of Chicago Lab School. So it's a great place. We love it. We've enjoyed every year of it. And you know what's interesting? I'm looking at all these issues we're having as far as not having enough space. It wasn't very long ago when our kids were still in school, they were thinking of closing Hollywood because there were not enough kids. And now we've gone the other way. Now, my wife and I are one of the few leftovers that are the old folks that are, we're empty nesters. But yes, we do have a blast of kids coming through. But when that group goes through, what are we left with? You're going to see a drop in kids. I mean, there's no more residential buildings. You can't build a 5-story apartment complex or condominium with us. So there's a fixed number of residential homes. So rather than go out and tear this building down, and I can tell you this, we're united very strongly. We like our green space. We don't like that to be messed with. We like our kids, and we love the education they're getting there. So I think we're looking, be careful that you're trying to do something for a very short period of time, because I don't think this is going to exist for very long. Just look at the ages of the kids. We love to watch. We got a corner of our house. We're a block away from the Hollywood School. Every morning we see the whole train of kids going in. And you know what? It's a big blast, a lot more than when our kids went through. But again, once they are done with 5th grade, what are you going to need all that room for? So think in the future, because you're going to have a battle on your hands with the Hollywood residents. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment?
I was just wondering, are any of you from the Hollywood area or no?
I am.
Are you in Hollywood or the Riverside part of Hollywood?
Does it make a difference?
Yes, it does.
In my opinion, it doesn't make a difference, but I live in
You live
Riverside.
on the wood side, east side of that, so you're in the Riverside part of Hollywood. Thank you.
My sister does.
Part of Hollywood is also part of Lions too, so you know, there are 3.
Oh, right.
All right. Is there any additional public comment? Going once?
Yeah,
All right.
just off the cuff, is it okay? Off the cuff, no time?
We can't interact with you, just so you know.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead.
I don't want you to. And being a teacher, like I said, for all my life, 30-some years, I'm familiar with school boards. And school boards is a thankless job at times, and I understand and I get it. And sometimes you have to make hard decisions, and I understand that. But also I want you to be aware of the fact that we are Hollywood, and that we do have a sense of history there. And it's as important as any of the history that surrounds you in Riverside, Oak Park, the Grange, etc. So when you're making decisions, understand that there's a large history that needs to be preserved. It's one of the pillars that define a community. You destroy one of those pillars, the other pillars will fall. School districts are important, but it's one of the pillars that define a community. And I love Hollywood School.
Thank you.
By the way, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. You have any additional? Last chance. Okay. If there's no further public comment, we will continue back to continuation of the superintendent's report, although we've
In a minute.
lost the superintendent.
I think she needed a quick break.
Yes. Let's see.
We're going to a 5-minute break.
Yeah, we might, we can't go on without her, so.
Right, we're going to wait.
Yeah, I don't
We'll
want to
wait.
go on without.
5-minute recess? All right, we can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know the rules around that, but.
No.
Oh.
Here she's back, okay.
Oh, okay, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, yeah.
Are we ready to continue the superintendent's report? Is that our plan?
We are ready, yes.
Okay. And it's 8:45, so we had also talked about, do we want to start in with this part of the process and then see where we get tonight, or do we want to table this for another time altogether? And there's been a lot on the agenda tonight.
I might suggest tabling. I kind of wanted to absorb like all the comment and documents. I don't know if I'm the only one, but.
What did you say, you're in favor of tabling
I
it?
think I am, just because it gets kind of late and then I'm not sure we're good decision makers when it gets super late at night, but.
I agree, sure, after 9 o'clock, I'm pretty much out. 15 minutes, but
I'm kind of just hearing what we talked about.
Can we just have like a larger overview conversation, like A, B, and C of the superintendent, the board vision and goals, just, you know, we do have a new board member now, and it might be good just to review those things and to talk about when we can have a larger, because I do think this conversation is really important, and I think we need to
Oh,
have it.
certainly, that's why I kind of want to make it.
No,
don't know.
I agree, that's why I'm
More
saying if we
time,
can.
yeah.
I mean, if we can do the planning and the plans and goals at a separate time, but maybe just talk about like, you know, the higher level procedural, you know, just touch base, review those things, and I think we can do that in 10 minutes. That's just my opinion.
That's something that's
Okay,
viable?
sure,
Sure,
all right.
okay.
So annually, we have looked at our board, and board superintendent agreements. Those agreements really came out of the Illinois Association of School Boards self-evaluation. It was actually something that the Board of Education did just before I started, and then those agreements were formalized just the spring before I started. So that was spring of 2016. Since that time, I know David, Dan, Joel, and Wesley have all come on the board since that time. So I think in reviewing the board superintendent agreements, as well as just, so it's A, B, and C, the comment about the Illinois School Board self-evaluation, it would be my recommendation that certainly we review these, but also that we consider doing an updated self-evaluation sometime. And really, I think a self-evaluation is something that a board does in closed session, facilitated by somebody from the Illinois School Board Association. Again, I know finding a date and a time is always challenging for this group. Sometimes it's a Saturday morning option. I also wonder, and again, some of you that were here that participated in the self-evaluation, it is not really the same as goal setting, but I think some of that sharing kind of people's visions, desires, thoughts around board legacy, et cetera, also does inform the goal process. So, you know, I wondered if, again, we need to review these and we need to update them, I think also. So that would be my recommendation, is that we consider the self-evaluation. Maybe we see when we could coordinate a date for that. My guess is it would be fall by the time we get to that. I think also because the School Board Association, you have to schedule a fair amount of time in advance with them also. And then that would potentially, as I said, update the goals and also give us an opportunity to talk about kind of legacy and vision as well.
I know we talked about doing this last year and we decided against it. I do think we should do it this year. And so I would support doing that, even if it means moving this into the fall. I'd be.
Do you remember who we had last time, Jeff and
Barb
Linda?
Tony. She retired.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
She retired? Okay.
But didn't she give you a recommendation
She did.
of somebody?
She did,
Yeah.
I 100% support it. I think we can only improve if we're, you know, making sure we're evaluating the process and coming to shared agreements on everything. So I think nobody wants to come here maybe for a Saturday morning for a few hours. I think it's well worth the time spent, and it'll help us go down the path.
Do people have a preference of looking at a night or looking at a Saturday morning? Like,
I work on Saturday mornings. That's my job. So I could never do that, but because I work.
Saturday afternoon, or is it really a
I work
weeknight?
with children all day, so.
Sorry, are you arguing in favor of Saturday morning?
No, I. Oh, are you saying? No, I just would need a different time.
I don't have a preference.
Right. I know, you know, and I think even just trying to set out tonight as carving it out for time to talk about
Yeah.
goals and discussion, the board activity, the necessity of action items, et cetera, I think does fill our agenda frequently, pretty much always, particularly with all of the facilities work going on. So I'd be, as much as I've tried to schedule this kind of thing on a regular board meeting night, I really do think we need an additional time to do it. I think it's hard to take away from a regularly scheduled meeting.
Martha, I agree with you on that because we get caught up in the discussions of the items of the moment, and it's very hard to transition to.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
How long does this normally take?
I think it's several hours.
It was a few
Linda,
hours.
Jeff, Sherry, you've
Yes,
been
we
part
all
of
did
it.
that.
I think it was a
I think it was
3-4 hour.
3. Yeah, maybe it was.
That 3 hours is the number in my head too.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was 3.
That sounds right.
I think we scheduled 4 and it ended.
I don't think we took 4. I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was
scheduled as
fairly
4.
efficient. Yeah.
I know
Now we need to just talk about what a good, like, what days in general work for people.
Yeah.
Well, if people are comfortable, I would start with the school board. I know they have some limited dates, and then
Oh, yeah, let's
work
do
with
that.
Margie and work with all of you and see what we
That's a good
can
idea.
figure out. Just if people are in favor of doing it, we'll get to coordinating details with it then.
What do you think, like Friday nights, 9 to midnight?
Yeah, that probably works. So. My youngest is
I've had
heading to
meetings
college,
when
so,
I'm
you know,
in
What time do you start on
Linda,
Monday?
we're not
Yeah, how
allowed to
late do
have
I
anything
get up?
alcoholic in the school, so.
Well,
And you have
well,
to end by
let me-
11:59, otherwise you're in
I
violation.
guess
all
I
day.
don't want to take somebody's Sunday, but would Sunday
Over to the next
afternoons
morning.
possibly work? I mean, for me-
Depends on the, I would,
I don't even know if-
IASB, I'm not
Right,
sure
I don't
would
know
do
if
that,
they-
but you
people
could
are open to that, we can ask.
I think what you said is a good place to start. Start with
start with the,
I agree.
the availability of the
Yeah.
ISB,
Yeah.
and then we can move on. from
Okay.
see
there.
what,
Okay.
see
We
what
could
they
pick a date
say.
now, and they would be like,
Right.
sorry,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
busy, but yeah, let's do that. But I think we should make it a priority and get it
Okay.
done.
And so I think if you're comfortable, then we could wait, because we would redevelop the board and board superintendent agreements through that process. People have them in front of them, they've been the same now for several years. I would encourage people to take a look at them and review them. The other thing, I see Jim moving up here to the front seat, and the item on the slide, you know, obviously looking at our long-range financials is part of our goal setting, and it's the foundation for how we do the work with children that we want to do, how we do the work with facilities that supports children. We know that we need that financial backbone to do that. So I guess that's another question to the board is, do you want to have some conversation? Jeff, as finance chair, do you want to have some conversation about finance, or do we want to kind of table all of it? Under our,
Oh, sorry. I was speaking to myself. I was just saying, you mean having this conversation right now? I think this conversation
we're
would
good.
be tabled to that.
That we do all of it, long-range goals around student learning, around finance, around facilities, all of it waits
I don't know
until.
if we're all in the.
Right, because I don't think Jim has anything radically
Yeah.
new to share, just
Yeah.
an update from last
Yeah.
time with some minor revisions. So I don't think there's any, I don't think we really have to get into the nitty-gritty at this point in time, right? Unless you have something that, nothing really pertinent.
Yeah, as long as it gets shared, you know, publicly, is if there are any big facilities additions or something that change the, who knows?
And then we would
overall
just,
outlook. Yeah.
sorry, would review our intergovernmental agreements.
If there's
Also,
a-
we agreed that that would be part of our kind of annual process. So I would
Yeah.
suggest we do that at another time then too. So
I think
then,
we just all have to accept that we're gonna have an additional meeting,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be long, and let's start there and be fresh for it, so.
yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Then anything else? Then my superintendent's report would be over, Dan.
Okay, good. All right. I need this sheet in front of me here. So, get to the end. All right. So if there's nothing further on the superintendent report, future meeting dates, the August 7th meeting, committee of the whole meeting has been canceled. August 21st, 2019, regular business meeting at 7 p.m. the Hauser Learning Resource Center, where we're at now. Board will enter into closed session at 6:30 p.m. if necessary and return to open session at 7. September 4th, 2019, committee of the whole at 7 p.m. is at Blythe Park. September 18th, regular business meeting 7 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. Board will enter into closed session at 6:30 and return to open session at 7. And if there is nothing further.
There's nothing in the new business, right? It's just marked there, but we don't have anything on there, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
If there is nothing further, meeting is adjourned.